Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. May we have the registrar call the witness? Thank you.
Welcome back, Mr. Witness. Before I yield the floor to Madam Chair for continuation of our proceedings, may I remind you that you are still under oath.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Mr. Saul.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Counsel, I was.
Thank
you
you.
can proceed. If I have any further questions, I'll let you know.
Thank you. Mr. Sol, I refer you back to page 28 of the report, which deals with the $2 million seek government subvention given to Basse Area Council. Part of the implications that were stated were that there's a high risk of diverting money for personal use, which is meant for development of the region. Oh, sorry. Under the recommendations, I mean, you said that the chief executive officer should ensure that monies are spent for what they are meant for to achieve best value for money and the benefit of the communities. Now, we had the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Lands, and the Director of Governance at Ministry of Lands, and they had indicated, either one of them had indicated that even though the 2 million subvention was a conditional grant and it required certain processes to be gone through, and it also required the councils to have a project which that 2 million would go towards. Basse Area Council did not provide a project, but they disbursed the funds anyway. Now, do you think that that is part of the problem? They didn't have a project that the 2 million was going to go to, and the money was disbursed anyway?
I think not only that, I think that if you look at the finances of Basse Area Council, like I said in my testimony, they were deep in the hole. So that whatever funds was disbursed to them would just sink into the big hole that they have. So that includes the 2 million. So once the 2 million was disbursed, you will see that immediately it was deposited in a trust bank account. When it was deposited, the trust bank account had an overdraft of close to about $500,000. So that once the 2 million went in, the balance was about 1.5, and they immediately withdrew 1.3 million from that amount and started distributing the money. They gave, like I said, 100,000 to the CEO and 100,000 to the finance director, and made deposits to their various bank accounts. So that is really, how they operated. Yes, if for instance there was a ready-made project available, maybe the money would have been used towards that project. But obviously there was no project. And secondly, the council had financial difficulties, so the money just went, to their various accounts just to plug all those, holes that they have. I just wanted to also correct part of, the testimony I gave in response to a question from Madam Chair with respect to the 100,000 that was given to the CEO. According to the audit findings, the CEO had actually paid back the 100,000 back to the council. So I just wanted to correct that aspect of my testimony.
But then the Director of Finance and Daba Krubeli have not returned the 300,000 and 100,000.
With respect to the Director of Finance, something happened, because Once the Director of Finance realized that the CEO actually paid the 100,000 back, he went in and withdrew 400,000 from the account, from the council account, and paid back to the council 100,000 and kept for himself 300,000 as purported loan payment to himself that he has advanced to the council.
And did he provide any documentation for the purported loans he gave to the council?
No, ma'am, no.
Now, in respect of paragraph 7.2, which deals with the $26,894,181 and 2 butoots loan from the banks without approval from the ministry. Now, I note that the audit report refers to section 14.1 of the Local Government Finance and Audit Act 2004. This is, I note that several councils have actually relied on this provision, but it has come to our attention that the Public Finance Act actually repeals sections 14 and 15 of the Local Government Finance and Audit Act. So the reliance that has been placed on that section by the councils and also some government bodies is misplaced.
Okay.
I believe the provisions that apply now are, I believe, section 35 of the Public Finance Act. Let me just check. No, 53. $53 and 54, 55 of the Public Finance Act 2014. And if, with the Commission's permission, I'll just read. 53 is regulation of borrowing by local government authorities on public enterprises. And it says, as from the commencement of this act, borrowing by local government authorities on public enterprises shall be in accordance with this act, and every provision in any enactment, including the articles and memorandum of association of public enterprises in existence immediately before such commencement relating to borrowing by local government authorities and public enterprises shall be read and construed with such modification as will enable effect to be given to these provisions of this bill. And 54 says, 1, a local government authority may borrow only within the Gambia and only up to such limit as may be determined by the minister. And the minister in question is the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs. 2, for the purpose of subsection 1, the minister, after consultation with the minister for time being responsible for local government authorities, which is the Minister of Lands, shall prescribe an annual borrowing limit for each local government authority based on its capacity to repay and such other considerations as the minister may determine. 3, any issue of debt securities and any borrowing above the determined borrowing limit requires the prior approval of the minister. And 55, a local government authority shall submit to the ministry a record of its borrowing not later than 10 working days from the date of signing a loan agreement or obtaining an overdraft, as the case may be, and shall, upon request, submit to the ministry data on its total outstanding debt. Now, I'm not sure, considering that your directorate is under the Ministry of Finance, I'm not sure if, are you in a position to say whether the Minister of Finance has prescribed a limit for borrowing for local government authorities?
No, ma'am.
As in, no, he hasn't, or no, you're not
No,
aware?
I am not aware. I'm not sure.
Okay. I'm pretty sure the councils have not been sending records of their borrowing to the ministry. I'm not sure that they're even aware of the provision, but I just thought it necessary to point it out. And my colleague has some questions for you, so I'll just hand you over to him.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and my lead counsel.
Counsel, before you proceed, please
Yes,
let me find. Let me ask, Mrs. O, on the auditor's comment.
Yes.
I note that you indicated that the Director of Finance withdrawing...
Sorry, Madam Chair, where are you reading?
Page 29.
Page 29, yes.
Yes, auditor's comment. The top of the page.
Okay, yes, sir. Go ahead.
You've indicated that the Director of Finance withdrawing from council account and depositing same money in the council account is not considered as refund. And you've just clarified your evidence to say, when I ask you the question, that the Director of Finance repaid the 100,000. So I have a bit of a difficulty in appreciating what you mean here. So can you clarify what you mean?
So what happened is that...
Yes, let me just finish my question.
Okay.
And then you further on went to say that the team is insisting that he should refund the 100,000 together with Naba Krubali, who is also yet to refund the 300,000. So a bit of a clarification on that.
So what the team has noted is that once it was determined that the CEO actually paid, because initially when the cashier Naba withdrew 1.3 million from the bank, he gave 1 million, 100,000 to the CEO and 100,000 to the finance director. So when the audit investigation, when the audit exercise was being carried out, and this was brought to their attention, then the CEO paid 100,000 back to the council. And upon hearing that, the finance director as well, instead of taking his own money and paying back the 100,000, he instead withdrew 400,000 from council account, and then gave them back 100,000, and kept 300,000 for himself. The 300,000 he purportedly kept for himself because he said council also owes him money, so he's technically paying himself back, that 300,000. So that is what is been explained by the auditor's comment here.
Okay, thank you. It's understood. Council, you can proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, my lead counsel and the fellow commissioners. Sir, we will just conclude with the 2 million and then proceed with other matters. I'm sure some of these issues have already been highlighted by your very self, but then we will want to discuss it in depth and have a better understanding as to the issues involved. So again, in summary, maybe if we attempt to summarize what has happened with respect to this 2 million, is that government gave subvention $2 million, and once it got into the account of the area council, an individual by the name Mr. Krubali withdrew 1.3 million. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then further withdrew $150,000. And
that's correct.
And subsequent $800,000 was also withdrawn.
That's correct.
And when these withdrawals were made from the account, monies being given to the area council by government, he gave the CEO $100,000.
That's correct.
And then gave the director of finance $100,000.
That's correct.
And for the purpose of the record, the names of the individuals at the time of this report will be on page 6 of the audit report. If you look at page 6, the name of the CEO would be one Usman Ture. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes. And then the name of the finance director would be one Lamin Suso.
Yes, sir.
I'm going by the same page. What would be the designation of Mr. Krubali?
Mr. Krubali's designation is cashier.
Cashier. Now, is it normal that a cashier in an area council would have access to withdraw this amount of money, close to $2 million or more?
It's not good practice, but if you make a check in the cashier's name of 1.3 million, then they should be able to withdraw the 1.3 million. So
very well.
Yes.
And now, going by what is lawful in relation to who will have to sign in these accounts, then it would have been the CEO and the Director of Finance.
Correct.
So those two people, if they give authority to any individual, in this case the cashier, then it will make sense that the cashier will now have legitimate authority to go and withdraw monies.
That's correct.
And then now going back to pay or give monies back to the same people that were authorized in the cashier would probably be a suspicious fraudulent activity.
You could conclude that as well.
Thank you. Now, what interests me in that 2 million now is when these issues were being probably investigated, or maybe it has come to the notice of certain individuals, the CEO now refunded the $100,000 that was given to him by the cashier.
That's correct.
And then the Director of Finance withdrew, instead of paying the $100,000, now went further to withdraw $400,000 from the council's account, and then paid back $100,000 as a way of refund.
That's correct.
So now again, instead of making payment, he in fact has $500,000 altogether being taken from the account of the council.
Yes, that is the net effect.
Yes. So will I be correct to say you have two transactions being done by the Director of Finance, which are both not accounted for? Number one, the withdrawal of $400,000, and number two, the receipt of $100,000 from the cashier, which were not followed by due process.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Now, what the recommendations with respect to these findings? What would it be normally?
What do you mean?
When you have the auditors will generally make recommendations in relation to some of these serious findings in the process of auditing.
What's the question? I'm not clear about what.
Like when there are findings of malpractice or financial misappropriation or suspicious fraudulent activity, you would normally make recommendations as to what action should probably be taken.
Well, normally, I mean, our recommendation is based on the evidence that we find. We've noted that this can lead to fraud. It's probably not transparent. We could not establish evidence to see how the funds that were withdrawn by the cashier and then giving to the finance director has been spent. So so that is our recommendations would just say what needs to happen, going forward, and that's basically what we do as auditors. If this can be construed as fraud, but we cannot make that determination. That is somebody else to make that determination.
Sometimes we will see in subsequent findings wherein the auditor, your team, made recommendations for further investigation in relation to this matter. But the recommendation with respect to this one is that the CEO should not proceed with any loan. In fact, I don't know whether you have any recommendation with respect to the document you're reading.
From which observations? I mean, you're talking about still the 2 million?
Yes.
So our recommendation with respect to the 2 million is that the chief CEO and finance director should ensure that. Now we're just limiting that recommendation to the 100,000 because we were able to account for the balance of the money in terms of where it went, where it was paid. So if you just go back to the 2 million, for instance, 1.3 was withdrawn by the cashier, I guess based on the instructions of the CEO and the finance director, and he gave 100,000 to the finance director and 100,000 to the CEO. Then he did actually also deposit 800,000 and 300,000 to Vista Bank and Microfinance Supersonic. So clearly, he had disbursed by way of either giving it to the finance director or depositing it into an account, he was able to account for the 1.3 million, right? So the issue is now what happens to the money that was given, the 100,000 that was given to the finance director and the 100,000 that was given to the CEO. So again, if you look at the account, there was further withdrawal on the same trust bank account. He made a withdrawal of 150,000 and another withdrawal of 800,000 on the same account. This is above and beyond the 2 million. You know, when he made that withdrawal, the account went into overdraft again. It was already in overdraft by about $500,000. The 2 million was paid, you know, so he made those withdrawals. It went back to the overdraft where it was before the 2 million. So out of the last withdrawals he made, the 150 and 800, the audit team was able to discover that 765 of the 800 was deposited at Supersonic and 25,000 at Trust Bank. See also, so that is, we have been able to account for that. The 150, the audit team was also able to establish that 150 was used by the cashier to pay cancel expenses. Like I said, it's not good practice, but if they withdraw the money and are able to show evidence of how the money was spent, then we will take that evidence into account. So the audit team was able to establish that out of the 800,000, 760 was deposited to Supersonic, 25,000 was deposited to Trust Bank. So, and there was a balance of 10,000, which the cashier could not account for. So that is what the audit team is holding him liable for. So in respect of the 150,000, you know, the audit team was able to establish that it was used to pay cancel operating costs. So where we are able to do that, we will indicate that. And in this case, the 150, there was sufficient evidence by way of documentary, by way of vouchers to indicate that this was how the 150 was being spent.
But you also found out that $300,000 that the individual, Mr. Kurubali, claimed to have deposited in Supersonics was on the 17th December.
Right.
And that
Correct.
is well before the withdrawal of the 1.3 million.
Correct.
Can you please explain
Yes,
that?
correct. You're right. So we don't know because there is a timing issue here.
Yes.
So the withdrawal of 300, you know, happened. No, I mean, let me just read my notes just to be clear that my testimony reflects what happens. Excuse me.
The witness to the actual points that we are looking at.
It is. We are still on page 28. I think he has a copy of the report.
Yes, I have a copy of the
Yes.
report. It's the issue of the 300,000. I mean, when we looked at the bank statement, the cashier claimed to have made a deposit of 300,000, but then the date that she indicated that the date that he made the deposit
Yes.
was different from what we saw in the bank statement. So as a consequence, we believe that it just didn't add up. So there's a 300,000 that is somewhere, there's a gap that we couldn't account for looking at the bank statement. So that's why we think that the cashier still has to account for a 300,000 that we could not determine based on looking at the bank statements.
In short, what you are saying is his claim of depositing, that is Mr. Kurubali's claim of depositing $300,000 to the Supersonics account, all right?
Yes.
Was in fact not substantiated because the date would have been much more earlier.
Absolutely.
Than the actual 1.3 million withdrawal.
Yes. Yes.
Very well. So again, another observation is you can provide clarity on this issue. You've told us that there were 800,000 that was deposited to Vista Bank, but if you look at the language of the observation, you said that the cashier claimed to have deposited these amounts of money. For example, let me read verbatim. That is from line 1, 2, 3, 5, the fifth line.
I know. Yes. I've
Interview with Mr. Kurubali about the withdrawals. He claimed that 800,000 was deposited to Vista Bank. 300,000 was also deposited to Supersonics. And the 100,000 was given to the chief executive officer, and the remaining 100,000 was given to finance director. Now, by using the word he claimed, can you tell us whether you were able to establish, you've already told us, you were able to establish that the $300,000 is in fact was deposited well before the withdrawals of this money. Now, can you tell us whether in fact the $800,000 and the other monies were deposited after the withdrawal of the 1.3 million or not?
Yes, we were able to establish that looking at the bank statement, yes.
Very well. Now, let us now move to the issue regarding page 29, the $26,894,181 is two bututs.
Yes.
With respect to loan from banks without approval from the ministry. Are you on page 29?
Yes, sir.
Now, just for a better understanding, basically what happened here is certain individuals in the name of the CEO, the finance director, they took loans from various banks without approval, generally, either from management or the ministry. We have highlighted the names of these individuals on page 6, just to be on the record. That the CEO we are talking about is Usman Ture. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the director of finance we are referring to here is one Lamin Suso.
Suso, that's correct.
So your observation is that these amounts of monies that were taken as loans from various banks were taken without having the required approval. But then again, you found out that 15 million of the loan was in fact with the consent or within the knowledge of the council.
That's correct.
Now, when you say council was aware of this 15 million, does that mean council approved of the 15 million, or they were just aware after the fact?
By council being aware means there must be evidence on it of this being in their council meeting, minutes of the council meeting, giving authority to management to contract the loans. So that is what the evidence would show.
That is what the evidence would suggest? But probably that may not be the case. I'm not sure. Can you advise us better as to, do we take it that, in fact, as a conclusion, there was approval from council?
In respect to the 15 million and the 5 million, yes, we can. That's why we have it documented in our findings that council was aware of these loans. I would think that this is because the audit team found evidence going through the council council minutes, where you would normally see this kind of deliberations been recorded in the minutes.
Now,
Before you proceed, did you also see evidence of the supervising ministry having authorized the taking of the loans?
No, Madam Chair, no.
Thank you. You can proceed.
yes, if we ask for documentation perhaps to prove that the council were aware through the form of a resolution also, will you be able to provide that?
Yes.
Good. Then we will request respectfully that you provide at the earliest opportunity these documents that have been asked.
Okay, sir.
Good. So again, still on the loan issue. So $11,894,181 is two bottles. Probably there was no consent either from council or from the ministry.
That's correct.
Because that would be the balance in relation to the entire sum of money that were being taken in the form for loan. Do you know who were the individuals that that took these loans from these various banks?
The CEO and the finance director are really the ones running the finances of the council. So it's safe to assume that if there are loans contracted by the council, it would be by the CEO and the finance director, because they are the signatory to the council's account.
Would it be? Would I be correct to say it will be a very good practice for the audit team to perhaps see the documents in relation to the loan, so that there will not be any speculation?
Just hold on. Let me just consult it.
Thank you.
So what the audit team found out was that these people, the finance director or the CEO, or both of them together or individually, would go to the bank and just verbally talk to the bank and ask them to make these loans without having a formal application made. I think, as you know, sometimes you can have this relationship with the banks whereby you just go verbally and then, talk to them and say, we want this money. And as a condition of granting these loans, sometimes the bank will say, now you will henceforth be lodging all your collection to the bank, so that way, the money that is being lodged into your account can liquidate the loans. So there is the audit team was not giving any documentary evidence pertaining to this loan, only that they would go to the bank and verbally ask for these loans and they would be granted.
Yes, so it is your evidence that, in fact, these loans that were taken, do they involve the entire $26 million and thereabout, or thereabout, or just part of it, or most of it? We want to just be very specific. Your evidence is that, in fact, for the most part, or if not all, there were no documentation in relation to securing these loans. Either the CEO, together with the Director of Finance, that is Mr. Ture and Mr. Suso, either they will do it jointly or individually. They will go to these banks and then be able to convince these banks verbally, orally, without any documentation or formalities, and secure these huge sums of money.
That's correct.
Now, let's go through then the various banks that are involved and the amount of monies that were being issued in the form of a loan. I think there's a table that was being drawn by your team. Do you see the table on your?
Yes, I have.
Now, on the 13th day of January 2020, and please don't hesitate to correct me if I happen to be wrong, $1.6 million was taken from Trust Bank.
That's correct.
And then, again, this is an oral agreement that these individuals would have with the bank and get this amount of money as a loan.
That's the finding by the audit team.
On the 13th of March 2020, Ajib Bank gave a loan of $1 million. Again, no agreement, sort of no formal documentation, but the loan was given to either the Director of Finance or the CEO or jointly.
That's correct.
27 July 2020, Ajib Bank gave a loan of $415,234.25 butut. Needless to say, there is no consent because there is none. Will I also conclude safely that there was no formal application or granting of this loan?
That's correct.
After that, Ajib Bank as well gave $665,600 on the 27th day of August 2020. The same routine.
Yes, that's correct.
There was $1 million again subsequently from Ajib on the 22nd day of January 2021. Same routine, no approval granted by either the council, no approval granted by the minister, the honorable minister, and no formal loan application or documentations being done.
That's correct.
Supersonics, the microfinance, gave $850,000 on the 25th January 2021. Is it the same thing as well applicable?
That's correct.
$10 million again by Supersonics microfinance on the 7th day of September 2021. So the same explanation?
That's correct, yes.
No formality being followed?
No. The team was not presented with any evidence of the council having to formally sign an application form.
Very well.
Even though the audit team did note that General Counsel was aware of this loan.
Yes. So, yes, you have already highlighted that there were loans that the General Counsel were aware of, and there were others that they were not aware of. You have already dealt with those. But either or, there were no formal applications or agreement with respect to these loans.
No.
And there was no approval from ministry in any of these loans.
No.
So after the 10 million, on the 14th of October 2021, there was 5 million given by Vista Bank.
That's correct.
Do you know whether the council was aware in these circumstances or not?
Yes, the council was aware.
But then, so this is the 10 million and the 5 million that the councils were aware of.
Yes.
But apart from these ones, all the rest they were not aware of.
No.
But even with these two, the 10 and the 5 million amounting to 15 million, the minister was not aware.
No, we have no evidence to indicate that prior approval was obtained from the ministry. Thank
you. On the 24th of January 2022, Vista Bank gave a loan of $4,663,000, $346.77 bututs. And again, there were no formal documentation provided by the CEO or the Director of Finance.
Yes, that's correct.
And there was a $250,000 given or issued by Ajib Bank on the 23rd January 2022. Is it the same explanation?
Yes, that's correct.
On the 22nd of September 2022, Trust Bank gave $800,000 as a way of loan, and I believe as well is the same explanation. There were no formalities.
No, there wasn't any.
$250,000 by Ajib Bank on the 8th of September 2022. Is it
same thing, yeah.
Reliance Financial Services on the 11th of October 2022 gave about $400,000 to the Basa Area Council without any formalities in the form of an application or a loan agreement or so on and so forth.
That's correct.
Now, Before we proceed to the implications, the recommendations, the management response, what comes to your mind as an auditor when you see all these transactions being conducted by two individuals or one of them at a certain given time without following due process?
Council, this is, at the very least is a violation of the LGA Act. Definitely this is not how you run a council or any organization for that matter. Two individuals should not be, should not be able to have such powers, especially when they are actually the ones running the finance department. So this is really not good practice. They are not following what is in their finance and procedure manual. So it's just no way to do business as an institution.
Yes, but again, not only is it a violation of the Act, simpliciter, or that simple, but the Act is there for a reason, and the financial and accounting manual is there for a reason.
Correct.
Why would you? What is the importance of a finance and accounting manual?
Well, basically, they dictate how the institution should be run in terms of how you handle the finances of the institution. You are guided by the finance manual so that everything that you do should align to the financial regulation as contained in that manual. So that is why in any institution or in any setup, you have the reason why you have rules and regulation is to guide the conduct of officials, running that institution. And that is what the finance manual is there to serve.
And so based on your experience, what would then be the purpose once you have a finance and accounting manual, all the rules and regulations regarding financial activities? What does that seek to achieve?
I mean, it seeks to really limit what can be done, and guide the process, because if you don't have a manual, basically you're free to do whatever you want. With the manual, then it would prescribe how things are supposed to be done, and that is what needs to happen. So that is why, those manuals are not written because people just want to write them. They dictate the conduct of the officials running the finance department.
Yes, so by saying you're free to do whatever you want, does that mean then now the risk of mismanagement, misappropriation, fraudulent activities now becomes much more higher?
Yes, absolutely. If you have the manual and then you're not following it, so basically you're deviating from good practice, and obviously there's the risk of fraud and mismanagement, errors. So all that can happen due to the lack of implementation of a financial manual.
Very well. Now, in addition to not just securing these loans unlawfully and illegally, that is without following any regard to due process, do you know where these monies, whether they are being accounted for?
The audit team has not been able to establish that. That has been the biggest challenge that the team has, is establishing how those funds were actually being spent. For the most part, actually, because like I said, Basse Area Council was always in a hole, so they were just shuffling money around within the banking system, taking one loan from one bank, paying another, taking another loan from another bank and paying another. So that's really how they were trying to survive, basically, but they were constantly in an overdraft. So most of these loans actually paid either one loan or the other, or paid their salaries and allowances and things like that. Basically, cancel day-to-day cost.
So as far as the audit team is concerned, you have $26,894,181, two bottles that the audit team cannot account as to where it went to.
No, we could not.
Does the same apply to the $1.3 million that was withdrawn by Mr. Kurubali? Because we have
Well,
spoken about
No, I think we have indicated how the 1.3 was distributed across the bank and
Right.
given to individuals. To the extent that we have been able to account for it is we know certain sums went to this bank and an amount went to that bank. 100,000 was given to the CEO and another 100,000 was given. So if you add those sums, then it equals to 1.3 million.
Yes.
So what we have not been able to determine is when the 100,000 was given to the CEO and the finance director, what did they do with the money?
And also the $300,000
And the 300,000 that we still think that the cashier has to account for.
Now, management response was that it is true that the management has taken some loans without the consent of the General Counsel. However, the CEO and the Director of Finance will desist from such as recommended by the auditors. The money acquired as loans were used for Council's transactions and records are available for inspection. But as far as you're concerned, there was no record for inspection?
No. I mean, if the records were available for our inspection, the audit team would have inspected them.
Now, who generally provide these responses in the management? Is it the CEO as well, being the administrative head, and the finance director?
Yes, because the audit report was sent to the CEO. I assume it's the CEO together with the finance director that would be making these management responses.
How do you see that individuals being implicated in one way or the other, and they're the very ones who are now supposed to respond in relation to where monies have been spent? When you have this kind of situation, what would you think would be the best practice? Should it be Council's response generally, or is it okay to have the response from the same individual or individuals that actually allegedly misappropriated these funds?
I understand the concern, Council, but the internal audit reports to management. Our reports are to management. And as far as we are concerned, the management of Bassi Area Council is this, I mean, the head of the management is the CEO. So the audit report would be made available to the CEO, and I would assume that he was the one who led the responses with respect to the management responses. But what we try to do is, in our recommendations, is to encourage management to adopt new processes, to change some of the things that they are doing, because that's really the purpose of internal audit, is to find gaps, is to find issues, and then present them to management with our own recommendation, with the expectation that management is going to implement those recommendations. So that's what our mandate is. Unfortunately, we don't have an audit authority where we will send these reports for them to respond to. Once the report was finalized, it was distributed accordingly to the people that are prescribed in our charter that would require the distribution to be made to them. So it depends on how they want to react to the report.
Very well. So aside from the issue of the loan, let's now move on to page 31 of the audit report. Page 31 is with respect to the finance director's private business and Council's financial dealings. Here again, you have an individual serving as the finance director and using Council's funds and depositing them to his personal account because he has a business that he operates under Alert 10-2 agency. At some point, he deposited $6,481,061. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, this was what the audit findings was, that the Director of Finance has a business that he was using to deposit Council funds into. And we have been able to obtain the bank statements from the business, and so that funds were being deposited to that business, which were supposed to be in Council's funds. So the total amount that was discovered was $6,461,061.
Were you able to ascertain whether this had been an ongoing practice prior to the $6 million, or or is it just a one-time that you've realized?
This was not a one-time deposit. It's a total of all the deposit that amounted to 6 million. But what we have not been able to establish is that the scope of the audit the scope was for a period of a time.
Yes.
So we could not establish what happened outside of the scope of the audit. Let's say if he was doing that prior to the scope, we don't know. So we only was able to make this assessment based on the bank statements that we were able to obtain from the finance director.
Yes.
What happened, because he started working for Bassi Area Council, I think in 2021. In 2021, so we were only able to have access from the time he became the finance director of Bassi Area Council up to the time of the audit.
Very well. So these monies, 6 million plus, found in his private account, which council's funds, were they monies generated from revenue collection, or do you know whether the source of this income?
We have not, established the source of income, but then most of the council's income is basically from taxes and fees that they collect, from the area, from Bassi area, from Bassi. So the bulk of, if not everything, I'm pretty sure all these 6 million would be from revenue obtained through collections.
What happened to this money, this 6 million? Do you know? Were you given any further explanation as to whether, in fact, it was returned back to the normal account that it is supposed to be in? That is the council's account. Are you aware?
No, there is no evidence presented to us to indicate that the 6 million was ever paid back to council.
In the management's response, do they in any way give a detailed explanation as to whether, in fact, the monies were being recovered?
No, the management response is the chairman to write to the CEO for him to write a circular to all staff not to deposit council's money to any private or personal accounts, and as well for our line ministry to investigate the said financial dealings to prove beyond all reasonable doubt. Furthermore, all monies deposited back to the council account with it says, furthermore, all monies deposited by council staff to their particular account be withdrawn and deposited back to council account with immediate effect to seek for further clarification and justification for staff depositing into private. So this is basically what their response is, but as of the time of the audit report, there was no evidence presented that such a refund has been made.
And to be clear, we are still referring to the same individual, Lamin Suso, who engages in diverting council's funds to his own personal account.
That is correct. With respect to who wrote the management response, no. I don't know whether actually he took part in writing this response. It could be only the CEO, because like I said, once we send the audit report with our own recommendation, the response is called a management response. Who specifically within management was responsible for writing this report, we wouldn't know.
Very well.
Sorry for taking you back.
That's all right.
Mr. So, you've indicated that some of the loans were secured through verbal communication.
That's correct.
Yes, between the council staff and the bank, the various banks that have been listed in the audit. Now, what I want you to do to clarify for us is, what do you think should have informed the council staff to walk into the banks and do oral transaction? And why, in your view, during the process of your investigation, why would these banks issue over $1 million to an individual with no collateral with no contract whatsoever?
I think, Madam Chair, I think sometimes when these banks establish a relationship with these councils or companies, you know, there's always an issue of the bank wanting to be the main beneficiary of the council deposits, like their revenue. So what tends to happen is that the bank uses the council revenue as collateral for those loans. And most often they know that the council is going to collect sufficient revenue to be able to liquidate those loans. So they're willing to just on a verbal request, you know, grant those loans on condition that the council would be lodging their deposit with them. And that is what the audit team has also observed, that once they contract a loan, you know, the bank would insist that the council henceforth start depositing all their collection to a particular account. And so at some point, you know, if the council wants more money, they will probably stop depositing into a particular account and then divert to another. So they've been, you know, playing the banks, so to speak, you know, and taking loan here and paying the other bank and then just shuffling money around.
But my concern here is that I understand the relationship and the sort of reason that you have given, which might have prompted the banks to be giving this. But my issue, what I cannot understand is loans amounting to more than $1 million. How would the banks guarantee that these people would pay in their tax revenue into their accounts? That is one. The second issue is, how would, during the course of your investigation, looking through the accounts, did you see them depositing regularly into those accounts to warrant the explanation that you have given us, to convince us that this was the trend?
Yes, we've seen evidence of you know, those deposits hitting those accounts once the loans are made. So, like I said, I mean, this is probably not good practice. I don't know what the bank's reasons would be for advancing loans without collateral. I guess sometimes they do that, but I guess you know, that would be the banks to speak to.
Yes.
But obviously they have done that.
Yes, but in this case, you have already also indicated that the collection of revenue, particularly in the Basse Area Council, reduced significantly.
Correct.
Yes. Okay.
It did. I mean, there's at
you
some
noticed
point
that there was significant reduction.
Right. At some point in the
collection.
report, we have highlighted how the reduction in terms of collection.
Yes, we as Commission, we are just trying to relate how these transactions have been happening, so that we can get a clear understanding of how the issues, you know, are working at the level of the council. Thank you so much. Council, you can proceed.
Yes, Madam Chair, we'll notice you have raised a very important point, that the reduction into revenue was highlighted at some point to perhaps be an issue of uncollected revenue. But we will discuss that at some point, because then if all these things are happening, then it makes sense that in addition to the uncollected revenue, plus the financial misappropriation or fraudulent activities, of course you will not have realize the expected revenue that you are supposed to collect. So, but we will get there. We will discuss how that impacts the revenue that was supposed to be perhaps collected within this period. So let's discuss the implication with respect to having a director of finance in this institution or any institution using the area council's monies up to the tune of 6 million or 7 million or thereabout into his own personal account. Now, you have highlighted, when I say you now, I mean your team. I know you have been there only for 2 months or more. Just thereabout, right?
Yes.
Yes.
That's correct.
So you have highlighted that on page 31, that is the risk implications.
Yes.
That there is a high risk of fraud and mismanagement of taxpayers' money, as revenue collectors depositing money in the finance director's private business account. What will prompt an auditor to arrive at the conclusion of high risk of fraud and mismanagement or misappropriation?
Well, Counsel, that's just obvious because monies are supposed to be deposited in the council account, not in the private account of the finance director. Because if that happens, then the finance director can ideally use the money as and how they see, whenever they want, and that is not good financial management. And the other thing is, we wouldn't know how much money was supposed to have been deposited in the council account. The council would would be at the mercy of the finance director to come forward with the amount that is in his account, and I don't see that being an ideal arrangement. So the proper thing to have done was to have all the collectors collect revenue and then deposit it into various council accounts, because the council have no shortage of account. They virtually have account with every bank. So there is no reason why funds should be deposited in the account of the finance director.
Thank you. And you have also concluded on this issue that you were not presented with any evidence as to whether this 6 million plus was in fact returned or removed from the Director of Finance's account to that of the council's account.
No, we have not been provided with such evidence.
Now, let's just quickly discuss on page 2 with respect to the overdraft, page 32. And then we just discussed in this 7.3 in relation to all the monies that were being allegedly misappropriated or unaccounted for. Now, you have $2,430,792 is two products. Now, what is happening here is the area council now engages in taking overdrafts from the banks. Now, the observation is that during the review of bank statements and balances of the council, it was noted that the council has huge overdraft balance in its Vista Bank account and Trust Bank account, as indicated in the table below. Contrastingly, the illegal deposit of revenue into the Finances Director's business account, as stated in the previous finding, could have eased the council's overdraft situation. Here, you have the auditors worrying about the overdraft, an institution living literally on overdrafts, having monies being circulated around from one bank to the other or one individual's pocket to the other without proper accounting, which you have already highlighted. Then the auditor went further to even note that all your findings in relation to suspicious fraudulent activities, mismanagement or misappropriation of funds, having monies being deposited in an individual's account, all these things could have taken care of the overdraft issue. Can you please explain further?
Yes, that's the observation, that's the finding. Council is running huge overdrafts both at Vista and Trust Bank. And if you look at the overdraft, which is currently at one point, at least at the time of the audit report, it's about $1.4 million. If, for instance, the deposit that was made into the private business of the finance director, which was about $6 million, if it were deposited in these accounts, then the overdraft would have been cleared and the bank would have actually had a net position of about $4 million. So obviously, council financial situation have been made worse by the behaviors of its leadership, especially the finance director.
So then, instead of having council's monies being appropriately accounted for by following the dictates of the financial manual and accounting manual, of course, you have the institution being run by having overdrafts time and again when there are in fact revenue being collected, monies being literally owed by the council, but in individuals' pockets. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
And just for the record, the banks that are involved, Vista Bank, $1 million, $572,277.82 bututs as of 7th October 2022. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then you have Trust Bank, $858,514.49 bututs as of 5th October 2022.
That's correct.
I believe, in fact, these banks that have been highlighted here, given overdrafts, are the same, are part of the banks, in fact, that we have discussed earlier, that we were given loans and there was no evidence of formality.
That's correct.
Thank you. Let's now turn to page 33 of the audit report. Now, on page 33, are you there with me?
Yes, sir.
On page 33, you have the finance director again. That is Mr. Suso.
Yes.
The reason why I am repeating the names just to make sure that we are in line with what the individuals we are referring to who were occupying this office at the time of this report. So therefore, he withdrew $4,183,500, and his claim was it was for the operations of the area council, that is Basse Area Council. But then the audit report found out that there were no evidence to support his assertion or allegation. Can you please?
Yeah, that's correct, because what the evidence shows is that the finance director have been making withdrawals. He's been writing checks to himself and making withdrawals purportedly for cancelled activities.
Can you repeat that part again? You were saying he had been writing checks to himself?
Yes, those withdrawals are all by checks.
Yes, please.
So he would write a check to himself and cash those checks and purportedly to use for cancelled activities. But the audit team has not been presented with any evidence to show how these funds have been spent by the council.
But how is that possible? You have one individual. There are rules and regulations surrounding who should sign or be signatories to these accounts or withdraw monies from these accounts in relation to the activities of the area councils. What do you think made it possible for the finance director himself to sign check or issue check in his own name and then go to the bank and withdraw this amount of money up to the tune of $4 million?
It shouldn't happen. It's not good practice, but he's, of course, one of the signatories to the account. The other signatory to the account is the CEO. So I'm assuming every check has both his signature and the signature of the CEO. So once you have those two people sign a check, then anybody's name on that check can go to the bank and make a withdrawal. So if he decides to write a check to himself and he signs and the CEO signs, then he can walk to any bank, and as long as the bank is willing to honor the check, he can make the withdrawal.
When you say it is not good practice, I know you're being much more diplomatic here, right? Granted, we agree it's not good practice. In fact, it's better to say it's not in line with the law, in fact, which you have used time and again in the audit report. But more than that, would it not raise a suspicious thing in relation to whether the actions being perhaps fraudulent in nature?
Council, this shouldn't happen. I would consider that, an institution should not be run that way. I don't see any good institution being run that way. The finance director should not be making checks to himself and walking to the bank and having those cash to him. So that's just shouldn't happen. I guess there is lack of control. They don't have good systems. I guess that is what allows something like this to keep happening.
Will it be reasonable to conclude that it may be a suspicious activity of fraud? Your team has made a similar conclusion. I think we have discussed that on page 31, wherein this same finance director, remember we are talking about the same individual on multiple occasions,
yes,
engaging in financial practice. At some point,
yes,
in the beginning, The comments in respect to the implications were a bit limited to perhaps it's not the procedure, it's not due practice, and so on and so forth. But on page 31, the team highlighted, in fact, it is a high risk of fraud. When you have council's monies being put into your own personal account, a similar thing has occurred here. 4 million, in fact, a higher number, a similar number, $4,183,500. You sign check in your own name and you go and withdraw it, knowing fully well for a fact that this shouldn't happen, like you were saying. It's not the procedure, it's not lawful, it's illegal, but you do it. Would it be fair enough if they were to conclude that it is a high risk of fraud?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. With respect to, did they make any observation to that effect?
Who?
The management in this area.
The management response is that the permanent secretary and the CEO should investigate all withdrawals and make sure that any payments made, the director of finance. This is something that the management wrote, so I'm reading it verbatim as it was written by the management.
Yes.
To make sure that any payment made the director of finance and not used for. Well, I think what they're trying to see here is that the permanent secretary.
You can turn to the next
page.
Yes,
the permanent secretary and the CEO should make sure that the director of finance probably pays these monies back to council. That's the essence of really their response. That he should refund this money immediately.
Do you know whether these monies were refunded?
We have not been presented with evidence to suggest, to indicate that a refund has been made by the Director of Finance.
And with respect to these monies that were withdrawn, you have also provided a table. That is that Reliance Bank, $110,000. Is that accurate? On the 21st of April.
Yes, that's accurate. Yes.
Again, Reliance Bank, $15,000.
That's correct.
Another $6,000 from Reliance Bank.
That's correct.
Then another $380,000 from Reliance Bank.
That's correct.
Then you have Ajib, $30,000.
That's correct.
Then you have another $300,000 from Ajib.
That's correct.
Then $570 from Ajib.
That's correct.
$4,500 again from Ajib.
That's correct.
The finance director again withdrew $70,000 from Vista Bank.
That's correct.
Vista Bank again $50,000.
That's correct.
So he withdrew from Vista Bank about 7 times.
That's correct.
7, yeah. And the highest he withdrew from Vista Bank was $300,000.
That's correct.
Then the other banks that were involved is Trust Bank Limited. Is that correct?
That's correct.
On 6 occasions.
Yes, Council.
The highest amount is $750,000.
That's correct.
The lowest would be $10,000.
That's correct.
And he also withdrew from Supersonics $80,000, then $180,000 at some point, then $25,000, then $50,000. All this on various situations, different dates.
That's correct.
And so the amount accumulated to $4,183,500.
That's correct.
And as you and I are discussing this, they didn't still provide your office with any information to back this up.
No, Council.
Unless the commission, yes.
I thought I heard a paragraph that says that the PS and the CEO should make sure that the finance director pays back these monies. Am I right?
That's correct.
Is it that, correct me if I am wrong, that all of these withdrawals had only one signatory into on the check?
No, all checks have 2 signatures, both that of the finance director and the CEO.
Now, my question is, why should the PS and the CEO, who is also a signatory to all of these accounts, these withdrawals be asked to ask the finance director to refund these monies. Isn't he an accomplice?
Presumably he is, but this is the response from management. This is something that management said that is what should happen. If you look at the column, it's under responsibility. Who would be responsible for making sure that these monies are refunded? And they indicated the permanent secretary, PS, and the CEO. Like I said, this is everything on management's response is from management itself. We are just providing you with what they have said.
Thank you.
Can I proceed? Thank you so much. Yes, so we have discussed the issue regarding the banks involved in relation to the withdrawals by the finance director. Now, let's briefly discuss again page 35 with respect to overpayment of $2,295.20 to Green Vision. Do you see that?
Yes, Council, I have.
Now you have the area council, Basse Area Council, having a contract, an agreement with Green Vision. Now, the review of the contract documents of back, the auditors note that the council awarded one contract to Green Vision for the construction of roads at Bajakunda, and the amount involved was $3,928,405. But however, it was also noted that, with respect to the council's bank statement, that $5,992,720 was paid to Green Vision instead, and yet still the Green Vision is claiming for arrears of $395,000. Here you have an issue where, wherein the council contracted a particular company called Green Vision to construct a certain road. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then there was a contractual amount involved. And now the amount of money involved, now the area council paid more than the amount of the contractual amount.
Yes, that's what the evidence reveals.
And when the auditors spoke to Green Vision in fact were claiming that there were areas that the area council owed them.
Yes, we have evidence that Greenville is still claiming an areas of $395,301 and 5 butts. Even though we've realized that there's an overpayment in respect to this contract, but the vendor is still claiming that he still owes some money.
Yes, so what do you think gave rise to the area council making, or the finance director making payments, making overpayments to the Green Vision?
I don't know why they should make an overpayment. It shouldn't happen. And the irony is that the vendor is still claiming money. So technically, he probably has not been paid the contractual amount, which is 3.9. That's the only logical conclusion one can draw from that.
So let's break it down in pieces. I get what you are saying, that even though there was an overpayment that the auditors found in relation to council or the director of finance and the CEO probably making payment more, almost $2 million or more than the actual contractual amount to Green Vision. But here you now have Green Vision saying, in fact, we were not fully paid. We have an outstanding balance we are claiming for.
That's correct.
So now let's take it in one at a time. If council is to make payment to Green Vision and there is an overpayment of $2 million, would it be logical for Green Vision now to come back and claim $395,000 being arrears of the original contractual amount?
No, if Greenville was, if all the 5.9 million was paid to Greenville as the as the audit evidence shows, then I would assume that they would not come back and be claiming 395,000. So the only logical conclusion you can draw from this is that they have not received the entire 5.9 million. And that is difficult to establish because the way the council go ahead and pay their vendors is cash. So instead of writing them a check, you could have traced, those payments, but obviously that is not the case here.
But in this case here, it appears as if, again, just guide us through that there were checks drawn. You will see a table.
Okay.
At page 35.
Yes.
That seems to be, in this case, there were checks drawn.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, but then 2 million or more were drawn in the name of Green Vision in this matter. So they were paid more. In fact, the check, the first installment was at Vista Bank,
yes,
$1,571,362. And then you have the second installment, Supersonics. Then you have 1,942,000 or more. Then Supersonics again, the third installment, $1,178,521. And then Supersonics 500,000, Vista Bank 300,000, Vista Bank 300,000, and the last was Vista Bank 200,000. So in essence, they paid 5,992,700. They have a contract. The contract states you have to pay 3,928,000. So then you have an overpayment of 2 million plus. But Green Vision is saying we are not being paid adequately. I would want to think that probably you paid someone, you overpaid someone, then inform the individual, hey, I've already overpaid you, give me back the balance, you give to me in cash, but then the record shows that I've already paid you in full. Can that situation here be inferred?
This is really something that is baffling. Obviously, you made a correct observation. In this instance, they were paid by check. You will expect that this is going to be easy to reconcile. The council should be able to reconcile this easily, not to overpay. We don't know what happened here. All we know is that there was evidence based on these payments that. And then we have reviewed the contract documents. We saw the contract document, and the contract specifically was for $3,928,405. But when the payments were reviewed by looking at the bank statement, the total that was paid to this contractor was $5,922,720 buruts. And we have also seen evidence from the contractor requesting for an area still of $395,000. So it's baffling. We don't know what happened, why there was an overpayment, but at the same time, the contractor is still claiming more money from the council.
Very well. But then in some instances, when the auditor make findings, then there will be management response as to trying to justify, whether logically or illogically, but still trying to justify certain queries by the auditor, right?
Correct.
But in this instance, there is no management response. Well, maybe I have not seen it on this document. Can you confirm whether there is any management response?
Yes, there is.
What is the management response to that?
The management, it is true that there was an overpayment, but a reconciliation was done to effect and ready for inspection. I don't know what, they're saying they did a reconciliation and ready for inspection, but we have not been provided with that. And the auditor's comment is the management of Brikama Area Council should recover the overpayment from Greenville. So we still maintain that there's an overpayment of $2,064,000. And I think the management is not disputing that because they said it's true. On their management response, they have affirmed the finding.
Yes. So that the interesting part now is that will be on page 36, right?
Yes, on page 36, yes.
Now, if the auditor highlights that there is an inconsistency, anomaly, or whatsoever, and then it's been brought to the attention of management, and then they respond to perhaps try to clarify a certain situation. And in this situation, they are saying, it is true we paid more than 2 million to Green Vision.
Yes. Yes.
But then we have already reconciled, and therefore everything's ready for inspection. If there was reconciliation at any given time, what would have been the normal thing to do by the finance director and the CEO or either of them to try to prove to you as an auditor that in fact this issue has already been resolved?
So if they had evidence or documents available to prove that they did a reconciliation and to indicate whether there was an overpayment or not, we will take a look at that evidence and draw a conclusion based on the evidence that is that was presented. But
So
in this case, no evidence was presented. They made reference to having done a reconciliation and ready for inspection, but we have not been provided with such evidence to review.
they accepted the overpayment,
Yes, they accepted the overpayment.
and they now said we have reconciled.
That's what they
Which
said.
means probably the only conclusion would be we have dealt with the contractor and we have recovered the 2 million plus.
I suppose that should be
Yes.
what should happen.
And therefore, if that is the case, then it will be logical for the auditor to have documents to establish that in fact the 2 million was recovered from the contractor,
Correct.
and that was not done in this manner.
Correct.
Do you know, just to conclude on this matter, do you know whether Basse Area Council, with respect to this overpayment of more than 2 million, whether they wrote to Green Vision, whether they make any form of claim? I know you've already said that you haven't had evidence, but are you aware at any given situation as an audit unit whether there was in fact any attempt to recover these monies?
We have not been presented with evidence suggesting that they have made such a request.
Still on the same page, page 36, there was an overpayment of $100,000 to €1 Kurubali.
Council, just a second before we move on
Yes.
to your Kulbar.
Very well.
I just wanted to zero in on Green Vision. Mr. Director, when you are auditing and a contract is brought to you and the modalities are explained to you, do you also check whether they have paid the withholding tax, these contractors?
Yes, we do check that.
And you want to ascertain that Green Vision did pay the withholding tax?
The withholding tax is actually the responsibility of the payer to withhold and transmit that withholding to GRA on a stipulated timeline. So what should happen is that before the contractor is paid, they should withhold a certain percentage. I think it's about 10%, and that should get paid to GRA. That is the responsibility actually of the council to do.
Yeah, that's what I'm leading to.
Yeah.
Council must have deducted this 10% according to your summation, or you supposedly.
Yes, supposedly, unless I confirm
Yes.
with the audit team.
I'm saying, did you go the next step to see whether council did remit those 10% or those withholding taxes to central government? Are you certain that they have done that or they haven't?
Let me consult with the audit team.
Okay.
So the audit team did indicate that one of their audit queries is that council wasn't paying withholding tax. They have not been deducting and paying withholding tax to government.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that would be very correct. I saw, page 65 was also a query by the auditor. Thank you, Honorable Commissioner, for that observation as well. We're grateful. So we move to the same page. We just stay on the same page, perhaps 36. $100,000 is paid to one Yero Kurubali. Now, Yero Kurubali, there was a Toyota pickup that he was supposed to deliver to the council at a price of $850,000, and payments were being made to him on installment basis. Now, the first installment was $250,000. Do you see that?
Yes.
The second, $150,000. Have you seen that?
Yes.
The third would be $50,000. The fourth, $100,000. The fifth, $200,000. The sixth, $100,000. There was a last payment of $100,000, which amounted to $950,000 instead of $850,000. So now again, the Director of Finance and the CEO probably paid $100,000 more. We have seen these occurrences happening on numerous occasions, paying again $100,000 more to an individual.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yes, please take us through these findings.
So
the implications and the recommendations.
The audit team did discover that there was a contract with Yero Kurubali for the purchase of a Toyota pickup, and the agreed price was $850,000. And we have seen evidence of there was an installment agreement on how Mr. Kurubali should be paid. So as you rightly indicated, these were the different installment payments, but at the conclusion of the installment payment, there was an overpayment of $100,000.
Yes.
$950 was paid as opposed to $850. So that is the findings from the audit team.
Now, the implication is that making such overpayment indicates a huge financial control weakness regards to the management of council funds.
That's correct.
Do you know whether they followed any due process in relation to the purchase of this Toyota truck?
Well, you would expect that if they had proper recording of the amount, the agreed purchase price, which is $850, and as they make installment payments, they would be deducting those installment payments from the agreed amount, and that would be left with a balance. So every time they make a payment, they should be able to write that payment down against what is left. And over time, they will. When it comes to zero, they would know that they have paid everything. So it's just very simple thing to do. It's just simple record keeping. I don't know why they failed to do that in this instance.
Do you know whether they followed the procurement regulation?
It doesn't look like that because this is a second-hand pickup. I don't think they had gone through the procurement regulations as prescribed by GPPA. Yeah.
Now, go ahead.
Sorry, let me just find out. This pickup, according to your observation, the owner in this, what I can understand from your observation is that this Yero Kurubali is the owner of the said pickup, right?
That's correct, ma'am.
Thank you. You can proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, still, please turn to page 30. Yeah, 37. You have $300,000 of council funds transferred to personal account. Do you see that?
Yes, Council.
Can you please take us through that?
So the observation is that we've seen evidence where the director of finance.
Please proceed.
Yes, the director of finance had transferred 300,000 to the account of the cashier, and this was meant to fund the staff 1/6.
Okay. Yes. Now, with respect to the funds transferred to the personal account of is it the director of finance or the CEO?
So the director of finance actually, I mean, we are assuming anything that the director of finance did in respect to checks would have to be together with the CEO because they are the two signatories to the account. So if a check was made to the cashier in the amount of 300,000, you would assume that both the both the CEO and the finance director has actually signed that check. Upon interview with the CEO, with the cashier, he has indicated that this 300,000 was meant to give staff a 1/6 loan.
All right. So, with respect to the 1/6 loan, was there any evidence to that effect?
Can I consult counsel?
Please, you can. You feel free to consult.
So counsel, what the team discovered was that there was a conflicting viewpoint on this between the finance director and the cashier. The cashier's own interpretation of, or how his own understanding of the reason why the 300,000 was paid to his account was that it was meant for staff advances, that is 1/6. But the finance director indicated that this amount was meant to pay for council operations. In either case, where there was no evidence presented on either. There was no evidence presented to indicate that it was given by way of 1/6, and neither was evidence presented to show that it was used for council activities.
Yes, in fact, that is what I wanted to clear with you, because here you have two versions as to what the money was for, but either of them could not be substantiated by your office. Take time to drink your water.
Yeah.
Is that the case?
Yes, that's correct. We've not been given evidence to support either of the narrations.
Very well. And Mr. Kurubali is the cashier that we made reference to on numerous occasions.
That's correct.
And the director of finance would be Mr. Suso?
That's correct.
Yes. Again, we paid 38 with respect to $118,750 being monies received by the director of finance from revenue collectors. You have it on your statement. You have it on your statement as 7.9. It should be 7.8 on the audit report. Do you see that?
Yes, yes, I saw that. I mean, I was in my statement.
Yes.
I was including every point on the audit report on my statement. So I was jumping because I was just focused on the key findings on the audit report in my statement.
Right. And yes, that's fine. So we will still discuss all of the issues that you have highlighted. With respect to the $118,750 that you have highlighted in your audit report. Okay. You have stated that these were monies that revenue collectors would pay to the Director of Finance. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what would be the reasoning behind that?
Again, this is not good practice. It's not supposed to happen. Collectors are not supposed to pay money to the Director of Finance. The council has bank accounts all across Basse. They should be paying all collected funds that belongs to the council to those bank accounts, and not to be paid to the Director of Finance.
So the management responded to that?
Yes, they did.
Can you please run us through the response by the management?
The management responded by saying all the collectors confirm giving money directly to the Director of Finance without the knowledge of the CEO. Therefore, the Chief Executive Officer should ensure that the Director of Finance refund the $118,750 of taxpayers' funds to the council, and evidence of the refund to be presented to the audit team. However, the Finance Director claimed to have evidence of the funds used in council operations ready for inspection. But the audit team noted in their comments that we could not substantiate the documents he presented for review, and therefore he should refund the money. There was no evidence presented to the audit team in respect to how the $118,000 was used.
So there were no evidence to back that up?
No, sir.
And part of your recommendation, you have highlighted that there has to be an explanation as to what those monies were for. Is that correct?
Say that again?
You recommended that there should you should look into the reasons for the collection of the money by the Finance Director and take necessary actions of when found wanting.
That's correct, yes.
What does that mean?
Well, because clearly, if the Director of Finance is asking collectors to give him money, that is a violation of the Financial Procedures Manual that he is supposed to follow. So obviously, that should have consequences, because what tends to happen in this instance is that there is no proper accounting for how those funds are used. And in this case, we have no evidence to suggest that, as he claimed, they are used for council activities. So, the CEO should make sure that something like this doesn't happen, and put measures in place to prevent future occurrences.
Mr. You highlighted in your statement, and again, that will be found on page 40 of the audit report.
Yes.
With respect to the Finance Director and his team withdrawing over $551,169,036.11 from various council accounts. Now, I will take time to read the observation. You said during the review of council's bank statements, you have noted that the Finance Director and his team withdrew over $51 million from January 2020 to October 2022 from various council's accounts, and you cannot establish if the withdrawals were used for council's operations as alluded by the Finance Director and team. However, such withdrawals deviate from good and prudent accounting practice. Now, you have referred the Commission to Section 9, Sub 9 of the Finance Regulation, duties of other financial officers, that all officers are personally responsible for the due discharge and the financial duties of their offices, and for the proper collection and custody of all public monies and stores receivable by them or under their authority. Now, you have a unit which engages in continuous and systematic That's how I will call it. Continuous and systematic mismanagement and misappropriation of funds of an institution accounts. Because throughout this report, what you see is activities engaged by the Director of Finance or the CEO or one or two of his or her agents, I will say, in relation to withdrawing monies and without proper accounting being followed. In this instance, the amount is $51 million. He has withdrawn these monies either by himself or by employees under him. What prompted this observation, and what is so peculiar about this case?
Well, Counsel, as you rightly pointed out, the total sum involved is over 51 million. And we have given a breakdown of what each individual within the finance team has withdrawn in their name. But this is not only, I mean...
Mr. Saul, are you referring to the table which is indicating the names that are, let me read, Lamin Suso, Finance Director, 4,183,500. Is that the table you are referring to?
Yes, Madam Chair.
So he's first explaining probably what prompted these withdrawals, and then we will guide the Commission with respect to the individuals that engage in these withdrawals. Is that correct, Mr. Suso?
Yes.
Sorry,
yes. So I was just explaining that the sum involved. This is from 2020. That's the evidence we obtained from January 2020 to October 2022.
Yes.
And the various individuals and how much each withdrew under their name is provided in the audit report. The biggest amount was in the...
Before we come to the amount,
right.
I want the commissioners to understand, because it is normal it should be normal for Basse Area Council or any area council or any institution to withdraw monies that they actually owe for the operation of the institution, right?
Correct, yes.
As long as they follow due process.
Correct.
There must be a reason why it has been flagged by the auditors.
Correct.
It's not about the amount, but probably by reasons of not following due process or any suspicious activity.
Correct.
So can you take the commissioners through why these withdrawals were raised, a certain suspicious this thing with respect to the auditors, your team, when they found out that an amount of $51 million is 169,000, that is 36 bottles were withdrawn through various employees under the Director of Finance. Why was that a concern?
Council, this was a concern because that's not how the finance department should be run. You don't make check withdrawals. You don't write check to staff to withdraw and make payments unless you're giving them an impress system whereby you give them a certain amount and they carry out an activity or make payments and then retire that impress. That is normal. That happens in a lot of institutions, including government. But in this instance, what Basse was doing was really all cash-based. They would hardly write a check to a vendor or a contractor. They would write those checks to individuals within the finance department so that those individuals will go to the bank with the check and then have that check cash to them, and they will carry the cash home or wherever and would start making payments. So what the audit team cannot establish is a link between the withdrawals and the payments. I am sure somewhere or most of these funds probably have been used in council operations.
Is it because you want to think the positive, that you want to believe that probably that should be the normal thing to do?
Well, because that's what
I
they
am
have
only responding to your last part.
understood.
You said you were sure that probably some of them might be used for council purposes.
Because that's what they said. That's what the council staff, that's what these people said. They said they use the money for council operations. That's what they said.
But as far as you are concerned and your team is concerned, there was no evidence of that.
We have not been provided an evidence that we can use to link the withdrawals to the payment. If they exist, they have not been provided. We are not saying that they took all the money and ran away with it or put it in their pockets, but we are saying if you have spent the money on council activities, provide us with the evidence so that we can do a reconciliation, but that evidence wasn't forthcoming. So we can only conclude that these funds were not used for council activity because the evidence wasn't provided.
Exactly. So that is the point. The point is, in fact, it was noted there on the observation that the team cannot ascertain because there was no evidence presented to the team as to whether this 51 million was used for council activities. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Good. Now, your team went further to provide details as to how monies were being withdrawn. And on the same page, Honorable Commissioners, page 40 of the audit report, you indicated, please see table below for the summary of withdrawals by finance director and team. Now, Lamin Suso is the finance director. He withdrew $4,183,500. Am I accurate?
That's correct.
Manlafi Baji, his designation is acting finance manager. He withdrew $1,795,406.80 bututs. Now, this Manlafi Baji is the acting finance manager. Were checks signed in his name, or did he actually authorize sign the checks? Do you know?
He is not the signatory to the account, so checks must have been signed to him by the finance director and the CEO. Those are the only two signatories to the account.
Which you've already guided the commissioners that it's not the best practice. It's not really something that you will advise anyone to do.
Correct.
It's against the finance and accounting manuals and all.
Correct. I mean, unless the check is for your own personal payment, I mean, they can make checks to the finance director if that payment is for him personally. But if it is for council day-to-day expenses, then payment or checks should not be drawn in his name.
In his name, exactly. So Ndaba Krubali is the cashier again. We've seen Ndaba appear several times in relation to so many suspicious activities, financial activities. So he withdrew $35,288,244.29 bututs. Is that figure accurate from where I'm reading?
That's accurate.
And Usainu Ture, budget officer, withdrew $764,569. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
You have Mohammed Jaune, a procurement officer, $1,367,254. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The finance manager, Bubakar M.J. Kante, withdrew $6,236,239.77 bututs. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
And you have Mohamed Lamin Keru, is a license manager, $1,189,247. That's correct?
That's correct.
And last, you have a self-withdrawal. This is made by the finance director. He himself withdrew, signed, I think, I would not want to believe, you get me if I'm wrong, self-withdrawal. What does that mean? I want to believe it's you issued a check in your name.
Yes, that's correct. So normally you can, because he's a signatory to the account, he can make the self to check. He can make the check to self.
Yes.
And because the way these names came about is by looking at the bank statement, the names on which the checks were made. That's how we were able to pick the name. So if a check did not bear any name, If there was no description, then this is what would happen. It would say self.
Self, yes.
And we know that the finance director and the CEO are the only signatory to the account.
So the finance director, Lamin Suso, withdrew another 344,575.25 putots.
That's correct.
And you were saying that all these monies amounting to 51 million, 169, 36, 11 putots, all these monies, the auditors cannot ascertain, because of course there was no evidence to that effect as to whether these monies were spent in council's operations or projects or whatsoever.
That's correct.
Yes. If the commissioners have questions on that part, I may allow commissioners before I proceed.
I believe that this is a convenient point to stop because it's already to 6, almost 5:45, and we would discharge Mr. Sow, and we will issue notice as to when you will be coming back to complete the evidence.
Okay, Madam Chair.
So you are hereby discharged.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And yes, so you can leave. Thank you. And I have few announcements to make. So yeah, shit. I was informed that there will be the State of the Nation address by the President of the Republic of the Gambia, His Excellency Adama Barrow, tomorrow. And as a result, we will be adjourning our sittings for tomorrow. Also, on the same light, we will be going on for a recess for 14 sitting days, that is from the Monday to Thursday that we sit. We will not be sitting for the coming 14 days because we are doing so much other activity. So we will be resuming the public sittings on the 10th of July, but the commissioners and the secretariats would be in the office doing the work. So we will be only going for a recess for 14 days. So as such, the public sittings will stand adjourned, but the commission and the secretariat will be continuing the work within this 14 sitting days that we are taking recess of. Thank you. So we may rise and have a good evening.